Okay, so this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to use StatCrunch to construct a histogram, right? That's the bar chart that reflects the frequencies or the relative frequencies. And I'm going to do this from the raw data. Now, if you've already done your frequency distribution and you have those things in different columns, that's fine. You can leave them. They're not going to hurt anything. But I wanted to go back to the raw data to show you that actually, when you go to do a histogram, you don't have to do the frequency distribution first, because StatCrunch is going to go through and do all of that tallying for you. So if I just want to take a data set and get a quick look at the shape, all right, then the way that I do that is with my histogram. So I've got my speed stored here in variable 1. What I'm going to do to get the histogram is come over here to graph. I'm going to go down to where it says histogram. Like I did for the frequency distribution, I'm going to select my data, skip over the next 2 boxes. Where it says type, if you want a frequency histogram, that'll graph the counts, leave it on frequency. If you want a relative frequency histogram, if you want those decimal values for each one, then you can switch it here. All right, I'm going to leave this on frequency. And then just like you did for the frequency distribution, you have to specify your starting value, right? We use the minimum, and the width, right? Which again, we calculated max minus min divided by number of classes, right? Everything else you can just leave alone. And when you click compute, what you're going to see is a shape that corresponds to the frequency distribution. All right. Now, if you take your mouse and hover over a bar, it will show you the exact frequency, which is the height of the bar. It will also show you the class, but remember, when that upper limit has parentheses on it, that means you're actually stopping at the one just before, because 42 is actually a part of the second class. The other thing to note is that we typically use midpoints to label the classes. And so normally what you're going to see when you're looking at a histogram, instead of kind of a begin and end, what you're going to see is a value labeled at the center of the bar. And that value represents the midpoint, right? What you get when you add the limits together and divide by 2 for each class. All right, and then again, just to show you, if I were asked for a relative frequency histogram, all I would need to do is in here, when I went to type, change it to relative. And you'll notice the shape of that graph is not any different, because where the frequencies are high, the relative frequencies are high because they're just percentages, really. And, the classes are the same. That doesn't change at all. The main thing that changes is what's represented on the vertical axis. And so now, because we're graphing relative frequencies, you'll see your scale here corresponds to those decimal values rather than the raw counts. All right. And as far as, what you guys are going to be doing when you're working through your homework, you're really, for the most part, just going to be identifying the shape of the histogram. So when you construct your histogram, if you're using StatCrunch, then you'll just go back to MyLab. You'll look at the different options that you have. You might want to make sure that you pop the graph out into a separate window so you can really see it good, and then just see which one is matching up to the shape of the histogram that you've constructed in StatCrunch.